Welcome, everybody, to Mom Street USA. My name is Kate, aka the Disney Cicerone, and with me, as always, is the beautiful, lovely, information-filled Jackie from Wish's Mama. So tonight, we're going to do a second part of our Disneyland versus Disney World series. So in the very first part of this, we compared and contrasted the parks, the rides, and the resorts. And we had a fair amount of history because that's just what I do.
It was great.
So thank you. So if you've ever wondered why rides are different than other rides between Disneyland and Disney World, go back and listen to that episode. But in part 2, we're going to compare and contrast the food, the events, and the entertainment of both Disneyland and Disney World. So Jackie, how are you doing this evening?
I'm good. I'm excited to kind of continue this series. I feel like it's been really beneficial, and we get these questions a lot, right? We get people that want to know, what are the differences? I've never been to this one, or I've been to this one, or how do I know which one to go to if I've never been to either? So I feel like all the information that we covered in part 1 is so important, and it was nice to kind of give it that side-by-side comparison and kind of a more concise space for people to be able to refer back to. And I hope that tonight we can do that with these areas as well.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because, you know, depending on where you live, you tend to go to one more than the other,
right,
or maybe not at all to the other one. And so I think it's interesting to, I'm lucky enough to be able to go to both frequently just because I'm a pass holder of both, and it's now part of my job, really. So I'm very grateful for that. But because of that, you know, I get to compare them all the time. And so it's really fun to get to kind of share like the differences and the similarities between the two,
right,
and explore that. So that
well,
being said,
interesting for me too. Sorry, briefly, I'll just jump in here before we jump in, because I've never been to Disneyland. So when I do these informative podcasts, it's fun for me too to research, because eventually I'll make it out there. So it's like, oh, this is just like my pre research to my trip, whenever that may be. So it's helpful for me to know and to think about all of these little details when you compare the two, because my family is very well versed in Disney World, but we haven't been to Disneyland yet.
Yeah. So that being said, let's talk about our first comparison category for this episode, and that would be food between Disney World and Disneyland, which I think people have a lot of opinions about this.
Yes, and I feel like it is so vastly different on the coasts, right? That's one of the biggest differences that I feel like we hear a lot of people talk about when they've been to both and they're looking to compare. So just some kind of stats about the two parks to give you guys with food, and then I know Kate's got some input on this one for sure, since she's experienced both, but just kind of a brief overview and comparison as far as what type of food offerings each park has. Disney World has over 130 quick service locations, which is an insane number when you put them all together.
Like, I don't think I've eaten at all of those.
No. No. Now that also includes things like some of the popcorn carts and snack carts and things like that as well. Right. Disneyland, in comparison, has 79. So vastly different.
Still a lot for only 2 parks, though,
yes, absolutely.
To be fair.
Yes, for sure. And as far as table service location, so if you don't know, I should say quick service is kind of where, like, the counter service, right? You can walk up, you typically get your food on a tray, you go and sit down. Yeah. But then table service restaurants, which would be, you've got the waiter that comes and takes your order, those types of things. Disney World, looking at over 120 table service locations across
a lot.
The property. Disneyland has 21. So again, vastly, wildly different
Disney
numbers
wins.
there.
No, just kidding.
It's not a competition.
It's not a competition. Comparison is the thief of joy, my friends.
Yes, exactly. So just those stats alone show you how big of a difference is. Just a fun stat that I wanted to throw in here just because I think it's so interesting, as far as character dining, because that is a conversation that I feel like happens a lot when it comes to any sort of dining. 13 character dining locations currently at Disney World and 5 at Disneyland. So again, you can hear the huge difference between those two numbers.
Yeah, but it is really interesting. The thing that I think of most, the difference between the two, is that Disney World's flavor palette is just like super different. Because you have to think of, mentioned this before, Disneyland is mostly locals, right? They're going to be, I think the mix was about 80% annual, like Magic Key holders or their annual pass holders in Disneyland versus 20% annual pass holders in Disney World. So that's kind of like the mix of them. So they tend to skew more towards the taste of people on vacation in Florida. Yes. And in California, in Anaheim, in Disneyland, they're going to skew more towards people who are coming there after work to have dinner, who live there locally, who are maybe a little more health conscious because they're not on vacation and they go often and they're going to make healthier choices sometimes, right?
Yeah. And so what you get at Disney World is really just like, now this is generalized. I understand this is not every location, but generally speaking, it's standard American cuisine. You're going to get a lot of burgers, a lot of chicken fingers, a lot of pizza, those types of things, kind of a very bland palate that can please the masses, so to speak, because you have so many different people coming. Your table service now at Disney World does tend to have some more flavor. I still wouldn't put it up at the level that you find at Disneyland, but you can find those locations that still have a more maybe exploratory palette, a larger range of options on their menu, things like that. But you're going to need to take a lot more time to experience that, and you're going to have to pay a lot more to experience that at Disney World.
Yeah, I think of places like, Animal Kingdom Lodge, has lots of kind of more exotic flavors there, which I really love. And I do have a comment here from Hope saying the resorts are better in terms of like flavor, quick service, even at Port Orleans French Quarter, Caribbean Beach, all have some flavor in them. And I would agree with that. I think that the resorts have, in general, once you get to the moderate and deluxe levels, they have more of an exploratory palette. So
yeah, because at that value level, you're just getting that food court style, right? You're not really getting the extensive list of things that you have to offer. But yeah, I would say moderate and deluxe, especially the deluxe level, they're going to have a more extensive menu.
So in Disneyland, though, the flavors there, they have a lot of like Hispanic influence in their dishes because of the local population, and more Asian influences. They celebrate Lunar New Year, so they have all kinds of really fascinating food from that part of the world during that time period. It's definitely the locals, though, trying to eat healthier and them catering to the locals. The other interesting thing about Disneyland is that their menus change a lot more often than Disney World. So Disney World, you'll see slight changes maybe here and there once in a while, maybe a seasonal treat in a couple of places. But in Disneyland, it's almost constantly changing, except for like there's a few staples, right? But there's a lot of things that change almost all the time seasonally because they want to keep up with that local population who's going to want to have new things to eat.
Right.
So
yeah, absolutely. I did have a question kind of over here in the live chat from Vinny talking about Disney Springs at Disney World. So I do think Disney Springs does have kind of some more extensive menus. That's because a lot of those are third-party restaurants. So you do get some of that more at Disney Springs. But if we're looking strictly Disney run and operated locations, that's where you get kind of what we were talking about earlier. So Disney Springs does have a little bit more, but again, it's still not to the level that Disneyland has when it comes to options and different flavors.
It's true. I have a comment here from Mel that says, I think Disneyland tends to have a more diverse palette because they have an actual culinary program. And I think I would agree with that. They also have a really good central bakery for Disneyland that is just phenomenal. So that's why a lot of their pastries and things that you get at like Jolly Holiday and whatnot are just really, really good because of that central bakery.
Well, and some of that also just has to do with the size of the park, right? If we've got if we try to implement a central bakery in Disney World, they have so many more locations that they have to distribute to that things can't be as fresh. It's just not possible logistically to keep that as it would be at Disneyland. So that's, I would say, part of it, not the whole, but I would think that would have something to do with it. They've got so much more ground to cover.
Yeah, they have to produce so much more. It's true.
That's kind of the general overview. Again, we're not going to go piece by piece comparing restaurant to restaurant.
It's we'd be here all day.
Yeah, no, exactly. And we've done several episodes previously on snacks and character dining and quick table service, it's all in there. So scroll back in our episode list because we have done some extensive dives into some of those different things.
Yeah, and I will say just kind of my own personal opinion. This is just Kate's opinion. I think the food is better in Disneyland in general. It's a little pricier sometimes, but that's because you're having not just mass-made, processed foods. You're having like actual real ingredients, and so that it's reflected in the price. And it's also, California, so California is expensive. But I think that the food, the variety of food, it's just there's a higher bar in Disneyland in general.
Yeah.
So, and I never have a hard time finding something I want to eat, whereas in Disney World sometimes I struggle in certain parks to find anything that I'm really interested in eating. So this is me personally, but I think that in general they both have really positives and negatives depending on your palate, so it depends.
Yes, and I would agree with that because I am pickier when it comes to eating, and I typically there are places I prefer and places I don't prefer to eat, but I generally speaking, other than Hollywood Studios, I don't usually have too hard of a time finding something in the parks.
Yeah, Hollywood Studios it's rough. It's rough there.
Yeah,
yes.
We need some new menus over there or something because
Well, I mean, one thing we can compare. Let's just for one thing, just one, and then we'll move on. They have Docking Bay 7 at both places, right?
Yes,
that's
very
one
true.
we can compare. It's exactly the same restaurant. It's the same design and everything. Every time I go to them, except for the location of the water, I think is different when I walk in. I'm I can't remember where I'm at, but it's just so much the Black Calf coffee that everybody loves that has the Cocoa Puffs on top is really different. The flavor of the cream is different. The menu itself is just so different from it. And some of the things are similar. They have the tip yip and things like that. But when I got the dessert there, I was so used to this amazing, I don't even think it's still there because they change their menu all the time for Disneyland. But they had this really amazing mousse thing that they had at Disneyland. When I got something similar-ish, the dessert that was at Docking Bay 7 in Disney World, I swear it looked like it had mold on it. It didn't. It was designed to look that way, but it was so unappetizing. And then it tasted, I was it looked like garbage. And then it was just really an interesting texture and flavor. And then I was this is not it. It's not the same. It was not the same. And that was my point is it's just really, really different. So don't expect that if you're used to something in Docking Bay 7, it'll be exactly the same in the other Docking Bay 7 because they're really different. Yeah. So
that is a very, very good, easy comparison to make. And I think that will be what you find, right? Everyone talks about the churros. The churros are vastly different when you look at Disneyland versus Disney World. All of those types of things that you think a churro is a churro. It can't be that different. It's that different. So, just be prepared. If you're someone who really enjoys the food at Disneyland and you're taking a trip to Disney World, just
lower your expectations.
Temper your expectations.
It'll be fine. You'll find something.
Yes. Yes. Don't get us wrong. You will find something to eat. And it's not unappetizing. It just may not be the most amazing meal you've ever had.
I think they designed the one in Docking Bay 7 to look like it was that way. I think it was intentional. I do have a comment from Olivia that says, I love Disney World, but there's a lot of fast food. As a Canadian, I'll eat fresh food most of the time. Right.
Yes.
Exactly. It's a lot of fast food, a lot of processed food, not a lot of fresh food unless you're going to certain table service restaurants. So.
One last comment I do want to read before we hop over to events and festivals that Stevie brought up that I do want to mention is she mentioned that she thinks that allergies are easier to deal with meal-wise at Disney World than at Disneyland.
That's probably true. Yeah. I think that they're more used to families having that. Not to say that they don't in Disneyland. Right. But I think especially because there's more table service restaurants, the table service restaurants are a little bit better about you can actually talk to the chef and stuff versus a lot of the quick service that you get. Right. So,
yeah, she said their staff is trained and more used to it than Disneyland, which I think is a good thing to note because if you are someone who has an allergy concern or a dietary preference or need, that's something that is helpful to know.
Yes, absolutely. Shall we move forward to our next part, which is
Yes.
events and festivals, which is, this was a tricky topic, I think, for us to kind of organize.
It's a lot because there's a lot at both, and there's some that are like sort of the same and some that are not. And so we're gonna do our best to give you kind of a side-by-side comparison, but there is some additional information that we're just gonna kind of stick in at the end to make sure that you guys just know what there is that they have to offer.
Yes, because they're different. They're just really hard to compare these. So, so we kind of move like seasonally through this. So let's just kind of like break it down to kind of like the first of the year.
Yes.
What is going on in Disney World? And then I'll do Disneyland.
Okay,
so let's just go back and forth.
Okay, so really the only thing at the beginning of the year that we have that is unique to that time period is Epcot has the Festival of the Arts, which is the shortest festival at Epcot, sadly. It only lasts maybe 5 to 6 weeks tops, but you get a lot of artists, you get a lot of artwork, you get a lot of special presentations and things like that, but it all is just centrally located in the Epcot park. You don't see anything more of that around the rest of the property, but that is kind of the one specialty during that time of year.
And I will say for Disneyland, we don't have necessarily like a festival that's going on then, but Disneyland does have a lot of seasonal celebrations. And so one of the ones that's a big one at the beginning of the year is Lunar New Year, which is a tribute to Chinese, Vietnamese, and Korean traditions. It's a multicultural celebration that rings in the year of whatever, year of the dragon, year of the rat, whatever it is, with Asian-inspired food and beverages and decor. And they also have a Lunar New Year procession, which is like a little parade, which is actually really neat. So I would say that's what you're going to find in the beginning of the year is the biggest thing going on. And that's at California Adventure, mostly, not at Disneyland.
Yeah, it's so sad that Disney World doesn't do something for Lunar New Year. Even at Epcot, it would be very easy to. You've got pavilions there that would be the perfect place to host things like that.
They used to have dragon dances as part of the performers in Epcot once upon a time. Like this, bring them back, at least for Lunar New Year. If you can't do it year round, let's honor those cultures.
Yeah, I think that would be fun. Bring it back, Disney. Bring it, please. Okay, so moving through the year, as we go kind of towards springtime, again, a lot of our festivals are at Epcot at Disney World. So we move into flower and garden season then at Epcot, which is, I think, probably the most infamous of the festivals, with all of the character topiaries and the butterfly garden and lots of specialty foods at the booths around and things like that. So that is kind of that time of year that we get that at Epcot.
And I will say for Disneyland, this is when we have the Food and Wine Festival. So if you're a Disney Worlder, you're used that food and wine is kind of in the late summer, fall kind of area. In Disneyland, it's not. It's in the spring. So that's when, and it's at California Adventure. They do have all the food booths and whatnot. They're completely different than the ones that are in Disney World. They have their own mix of food booths that are really fun. And then they usually have some, musical performances as well. They kind of, the vibe of DCA is always kind of supposed to be skewed towards an older audience. That's always been its intention for that park. Right. And they realized a little bit late in the game that they're like, oh, we have to make this good for families too. And that's when they started adding more things for families like Toy Story Mania and whatnot. But that's why you see a lot of live music and whatnot in that park that you don't necessarily see over in Disneyland, is because of the older vibe of the crowds. And that's why you get the food festivals over there as well.
Right. Totally makes sense. And then we move kind of towards like Easter time, right? Is very similar in that springtime. And actually there is something shared between the two parks, because at Epcot we get the egg extravaganza scavenger hunt, and we also get that at Disneyland.
Yes. And it's fun because there's cute little character eggs that you can spot all over the parks. And Disneyland, though, they actually have one that's for California Adventure, one that's for Disneyland, and one that's for Downtown Disney. There's 3 different hunts that you can go on, and you can get a map for those that's $9.99, and then you hunt for them. You can put stickers on your map, and then you can get a little prize when you're done, or when you're just done hunting and you just want to get your prize.
Yes, and at Disney World, that takes place in Epcot. And that one takes place in the entirety of Epcot Park. So some of the scavenger hunts that you get at Epcot are just in World Showcase, but the seasonal ones are typically the ones that take place in the entire park. So again, it's those little egg characters, and you get the map and the stickers, and all that stuff is all the same.
Yeah. I also say that around this time of year-ish in Disneyland, usually April to June, is when they have the season of the Force, or at least they have in the past year-ish. They usually have Hyperspace Mountain is when they do that overlay for Space Mountain during that time. They have special treats and merch. And this last year they had Fire of the Rising Moons, which is a nighttime experience with a different view of the fireworks and like a whole bunch of fun Star Wars-y things. So that's, if you're a big Star Wars fan, that's, if they continue to have that time of year, which they have brought Hyperspace Mountain back usually around that time of year in the last couple of years. So
okay, so that's kind of spring-ish time into a little bit of early summer. Now this year at Epcot, there was a larger gap between the end of Flower and Garden and the beginning of the next festival at Epcot, which is the Food and Wine Festival. I think Disney noticed that Epcot was just becoming festivals year round, and I'm glad that they adjusted accordingly.
We needed more diet Epcot.
Yeah, just for people to enjoy the park as is, right? So
and they eat at the restaurants more frequently too. When you're not doing the festival food,
right?
So I wonder if there's a little bit of like the third party restaurants that are there is like, look, you guys are getting all your festival foods and people aren't making reservations because they. So I have a feeling that's partially why they did that.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me because, I mean, there was barely 2 weeks between some of these festivals. Yeah. So that not only is that turnaround crazy fast for the cast members to have to get everything ready, but you don't have enough time to enjoy what's permanently there at Epcot. So that makes sense. So kind of end of the summer and into the fall is when we do see the Food and Wine Festival pop up at Epcot. So again, this is different time of year than what Kate was just talking about with the Disneyland Food and Wine. And it kind of operates fairly differently from the way that Disneyland DCA runs their festival. But you do get that at Epcot during the fall and into like the very beginning of winter.
Yeah, I'd say like one of the main differences between them, I think that there's the Eat to the Beat concert series that they have that goes on with, a lot of those things. And then the, in Disneyland, at least in previous years, sometimes they don't have this, but usually they have like a lanyard that you can get that has little pull tabs on it that you can buy. And it's a little bit of a discount then depending on what you purchase. But you can kind of like, get multiple food items with one card that you buy, and Magic Key holders get a discounted one, which is really amazing. But they don't have anything like that for Disney World. You can like get a gift card, but then you just like use it like a gift card.
And I don't understand why they don't do some sort of a lanyard experience at Epcot, but who knows?
The only thing that I really like that Epcot does is, at least for this one, they have the Emile's like fromage montage thing, which I realize that it's still going to be happening when I go back so I can finish mine because I have 3. I need 5. The thing is, if you get 5 items, then they'll give you like a free item with a little souvenir cup or something with it. So, but they're all like cheese items from the festival, and you get stamps in your passport. So don't forget to get stamps in your passport if you're buying the items, because you can bring it back later and get it later if you want. So
and they typically do that at every Epcot festival. There's usually some sort of a deal, right? If you buy so many items from a certain category that will be in your little passport booklet that you can pick up, then you get a freebie at the end. So yes, take a look at that for all of the Epcot festivals. Yeah.
Which is not something you generally find with the Disneyland Festival. So that's definitely a difference between the two. Both of them, though, usually have some sort of culinary classes or experiences where you can learn, techniques to cook or whatnot. So they're just different in the way they operate them and how they spread them out and whatnot. So
and the unfortunately the Epcot Food and Wine Festival, the look of it changed a lot post Panini, right? So previously they used to have more of those experiences and some of the like Food Network and ABC shows used to film at the festival and things like that. But I think a lot of that kind of drastically changed, sadly. Hopefully someday we'll get some of that back, but I think logistics are tricky to implement that again.
Yeah, they used to use those kind of abandoned pavilions and like host things in there, and now that doesn't happen anymore. So it's what it is. I have a lot of people in my chat talking about give them all the cheese. We want all the cheese.
Yes,
so it's a lot of cheese loving friends on Mom Street USA, which I appreciate.
We're here for that. So tell us about summertime at Disneyland, Kate. What can we expect as far as special events?
Yeah, so the unique thing for Disneyland that Disney World doesn't do at all is something called Pixar Fest, which is actually really fun if you are a Pixar fan. And it does go between both Disneyland and California Adventure. There's like different things that happen depending on which park you're in. But Pixar, they usually have fun fireworks and whatnot that go with that. That's a Pixar theme. I'm actually, to be honest, I'm not a huge fan of that fireworks show. I usually skip it because it's cute, but it doesn't have a cohesive storyline, which bothers me. So yeah, it is what it is. But it's really cute. If you love Pixar, you'll love it. And but then they also have food booths over in California Adventure because of this that are all themed as well. So it's a really fun celebration of all things Pixar, if that's something that you love. Aim to go in the summertime and catch that. And they've been doing that for a couple of summers now. So not surprised that they bring that back, everyone. So
yes, very true. Okay, so let's see. What else can we compare side by side? I guess let's keep going into the fall. Let's talk about Halloween time because that's where we're at right now. And I feel like that's kind of next on our list if we're going in the order of the months here. So at Disney World, the Halloween time, the main event that you get is Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party, which is a separate ticketed event. So everything we've talked about up to this point is included in the price of your admission. All of the Epcot festivals, the festivals that Kate has talked about in Disneyland and DCA, all of those are included. But when you get to the Halloween party, it is a separate ticketed event that you get, and you get kind of specialty entertainment, you get specialty foods, those types of things. And we've done whole episodes on the party. So if you need more information about that, go back to those episodes. But that is the kind of the highlight of that time of year at Disney World. You do get some specialty food items that exist in like Magic Kingdom and some of the resorts and stuff outside of the party. But there is a large portion of it that you can only get and try at the party.
Yeah. And the parade for the Booty parade is worth the price of admission. It's so good.
Yeah.
But I will say, at Disneyland, you have Oogie Boogie Bash, which the tickets are always notoriously very difficult to come by.
Yes.
And Dia de los Muertos, I think is how you pronounce that. Yes. So Day of the Dead, right? So the Oogie Boogie Bash, I'm going to be 100% transparent and say that I have never attended this event.
Really?
Never, no, because the tickets have always been so difficult and it's never timing-wise worked out for me to go. So I've obviously read a lot about it, seen a lot about it. They have some really amazing character interactions that kind of like they put the characters in these really cool places that are all kind of themed. And as you walk up, it's a really fun character interaction. It's very, very different than the way they do it at Disney World. Yes. So if you're used to Mickey's Not So Scary, it's worth it to do Oogie Boogie if you want to experience something different because they are not the same.
Yeah, they do those really cool treat trails. So like at Not So Scary, you kind of go into certain locations to do your trick-or-treating, but they have more like walking trails at Oogie Boogie, and that's where you get a lot of those really cool characters that you can walk by and interact with.
Yeah, but they have really, really fun lighting and decor and stuff too, where like they do too in Disney World. So yeah, to be fair, but like they have some really unique things that they do. They kind of transform things into, because I've seen this event as it's starting. I'm walking out of the park, so I've like seen pieces of it, right? But they definitely integrate Oogie Boogie into a lot of the Buena Vista Street, whatnot, and so it's really a fun party. It's just not something I have been to yet. Maybe next year.
Right.
Next year's my year.
Right. So. And again, that Oogie Boogie Bash is a separate ticketed event. Like Kate was mentioning, the tickets are very, very hard to get. There's a lot more limited dates that they run it, where at Disney World, they run their Halloween party from like the first week of August all the way through Halloween.
So many of them.
So many
of them.
Yes. Yes. Kate, what can we expect outside of Oogie Boogie Bash during Halloween time at Disneyland?
Yeah, so that's a nice thing is even if you don't get a ticket to that, there's still so many reasons to go at Halloween time. It's actually one of my favorite times of year. They have a lot of extra decorations in general, a lot of pumpkins on Main Street, including the big Mickey pumpkin, which was supposed to be the Halloween tree from Ray Bradbury, but that's a whole other story. But I like the Mickey pumpkins, so don't get me wrong. They also have the Nightmare Before Christmas overlay, which sticks around through Christmas and sometimes way after Christmas. That's for over the Haunted Mansion. They also have the Galaxy Ghost overlay for the Space Mountain, which is pretty freaky, not gonna lie. So if you have small kids that love Space Mountain, usually maybe like preview this online before you take them on that one, because it's kind of this big ghost face that pops out all the time, so it's a little freaky. The Guardians of the Galaxy ride also has the Monsters After Dark, which basically is a different storyline, which is actually really fun, but it's a lot more intense and it's a lot more up and down. And so just know that if you're usually pretty good with motion on the regular version of Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout, you might struggle with this one. Like every time I'm on it, I'm like, can we make it stop, please? Like I'm done.
You're like, why am I doing this again? I should have known.
Yeah, but it's really fun that they have like changed so many of the rides for that season. They also have Radiator Springs has really fun decor, both for Halloween and for Christmas. They call it Halloween, like you're hauling something away. Halloween, and they have for Rollicking Roasters and Junkyard Jamboree. They changed the name of the ride for that. They have like specific songs that they change all the songs for the season, so they're unique to that. And then they also have a zombie car that like is like trying to start, and it's really cute. So I just love their decor there. It's just adorable. But the other thing they have is the Halloween Screams projection show over in Disneyland, and fireworks just on select nights. Remember, Disneyland doesn't always do their fireworks every single night because it depends on local laws when kids are in school and whatnot, and how often they can have shows, and also high altitude winds. There's a lot of reasons why Disneyland doesn't always have fireworks. But yes, there's lots and lots and lots going on. But there is something that is also at Disneyland and also in Epcot this time of year. Do you want to talk about that a little bit, Jackie?
Yeah, so this is Pluto's Pumpkin Pursuit. So we talked about the Easter scavenger hunt. There is also a Halloween time scavenger hunt that you can find on both coasts. So again, it's one of those where you pick up the map for $9.99 and you get the little map and the little stickers to find all of the pumpkins that are all decorated like different characters all around. So it's super fun. At Disney World, this happens again in Epcot in the park. So that's where you're searching for those. And then at Disneyland, Kate, where do we find them at Disneyland?
At Disneyland, they're basically all over. So Disneyland, California Adventure, and also Downtown Disney. And the neat thing is that even if you don't buy the map, they're still really fun to spot. Yeah. So it's free to spot them. They're just sitting like they'll just be sitting above a ride entrance or something. They're not like super, super hidden where you have to have the map to find them. And they're just really cute little pumpkins that are decorated like characters. So it's very fun, like the Easter egg hunt. Very fun thing to kind of spot with your family as you're walking around the parks. So
yes, and if you do purchase the map for either of those, again, you get like a little prize at the end. It's usually something themed, depending on what it is. They've had like little tiny trick or treat pail characters as a gift for that. For the Easter one, they've had like little character cups and little containers, and so it's lots of cute little things that you basically pay $10 to get the prize at the end.
Yeah, and you don't have to finish the hunt to get the prize. You've already paid for it. You can get it whenever you want. So
yes,
they're not going to fight you on that.
No, and oftentimes you can just ask the cast member at the same time that you pick up your map. It's a little bit of a time saver if you're concerned, or if it's getting late in the evening and you're not sure you're going to make it back, because you do have to redeem that at a location before park close. So if you're not sure if you're going to make it back, just ask them at the time if you can grab the prize at the same time. Typically, they're going to say yes. I don't know that I've ever heard a cast member say, no, you have to go find it first.
Sorry.
Right.
Return your completed map in order to get it.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen.
No. Something that also happens kind of around this time of year in California Adventure at Disneyland is the Plaza de la Familia, which I think is how you pronounce that. I'm sorry, I don't speak Spanish, so I'm pretty sure that's how you pronounce that. But basically, it's a celebration of the everlasting bonds of family and Mexican traditions. So that's what we kind of talked about. Dia de los Muertos is honored with the cultural storytelling and music from Pixar's Coco. So they use Coco as the medium for that, which is where I think they're probably going to put that ride in that area because they celebrate it. Because this is like a tradition in that, and everybody knows it's there. So anyway, that's just speculation. But that also is happening at that time of year, just FYI, in Disneyland, which is really unique. I love that they do that, especially considering the population that lives down there, that they're like, let's celebrate this culture of a lot of the people that are in this neighborhood. So I love that.
Yeah, I really, again, it's one of those things like we talked about with the Lunar New Year. Why doesn't Disney World do something for that? I just don't get it.
I could figure is they think they don't have enough people that would appreciate it or something. I had no idea. It doesn't make any sense to me.
No, again, even if they house it in the Mexico Pavilion in Epcot, right? Like sometimes they do change out like when you first walk into the Mexico Pavilion, those little like cases and stuff.
Yeah.
Even doing something like that, or just some little nods to that time of year. But I don't know.
I think Epcot's lost a lot of its cultural stuff that they used to do. Just like as I study Epcot more and more, I'm like, wow, they used to have so many people from the countries themselves that would go and they would have a celebration of their song, their dance, the thing. And they do have some music. They do have some performers in Epcot. So it's not like it's completely devoid of it, but they have way less than they used to, which is such a bummer.
Yeah. And again, like we talked about, a lot of that kind of dispersed in 2020 when everything changed. And, it hasn't been that long that we've actually had the international representation back in Epcot. So hopefully that's something that they're working towards, and hopefully that will be something that they'll bring back, because I think that was part of what was so special and so fun about walking around World Showcase. Like, yes, the sights and, the shops and the food and stuff like that, but having those representatives from those locations makes a huge difference.
Massive difference. Yes, I agree.
Okay, so let's talk about the end of the year and what the offerings are across the different parks. So at Disney World, we have Mickey's Very Merry Christmas Party at Magic Kingdom. Again, this is a separate ticketed event that you have to purchase your ticket to. You get special food and special entertainment, fireworks, the parade, and that parade is so fun. I love that parade.
That's fun.
So all of those things, again, you get. And then they also have new last year, they have the Jollywood Night event. Sorry, I was like, what am I saying? At Hollywood Studios. And this is kind of your more adult party when it comes to the holidays. It does have stuff for kids as well, but it's more geared towards an older crowd at Hollywood Studios. Again, a separate ticketed event that you have to purchase a different ticket for. And they have lots of special characters, lots of special entertainment, lots of special food there as well. And this year they've even upped the amount of characters and entertainment and things. So it'll be fun to see, the first couple nights of that party.
Yeah, I want to see the ice skaters. I'm excited for that. So let's bring that on. Yeah.
They've got some really good characters that I saw, because the characters were what made it last year, I feel like, because night one was very rocky, and then they added a bunch of more characters, and that helped, because I think I went to night 3, and by then it was much, much smoother. And
it also rained a lot on night 1. Like it was almost rained out. So like we missed out on some things.
Right. And then across property, just in general, this time of year for the holidays, you get lots of decorations, lots of Christmas trees. Every resort lobby has a Christmas tree. Some are more extravagant than others. You get some gingerbread houses and things like that at the different resorts. There are special events that happen at the resorts. You get the Christmas tree stroll at Disney Springs. So lots of fun activities that you can do outside of going to the park, going to those extra ticketed parties during the holidays.
I will say, I think that Disneyland excels for the regular ticket goer during this time of year.
Yes.
Because so many of the extra experiences for Disney World are ticketed events. Whereas pretty much everything's included in Disneyland, and there's some fantastic things that they have. I'm not saying this like it's better, just saying like I think that you get more bang for your buck for your ticket for holiday fun at Disneyland this time of year, because they do have the Festival of the Holidays. This is something that they have at Epcot. They have Festival of the Holidays, so they have food, booths and whatnot. And they do that as well at Disneyland in California Adventure. The Disneyland, though, does not have any sort of Christmas party. So what they have instead is they have all kinds of things that are just kind of like they do for the holidays. So we have the Nightmare Before Christmas overlay is still there. They have Small World Holiday, which is so great. It's so beautiful. And watching it light up is like one of my favorite things when they turn the lights on. It's just like everybody goes, ah, it's so great. And then the whole ride itself is like transformed into this really sweet Christmas ride with lights and everything. It's so beautiful. They're currently converting it. So I'm like, I can't wait. They also like the tree lighting is also a thing in Disneyland where everybody gathers on Main Street and we all watch the tree light up, which is just so like such a, I don't know, like a homey thing to it, right? Like it's like what we do like in our homes, and like we're gonna light the Christmas tree, and like it's like a special. What I want to say is like it's like a very, I want to say vintage. That's not the right word. It's like it's nostalgic, I think is the word I'm looking for. Kind of tradition to have, which they don't unfortunately have in Disney World. But you can see that. I think it's in your app when they do the tree lighting, what time it is, if you want to catch it. They also have the castle lighting, and they have this winter time enchantment. So Sleeping Beauty's castle kind of come to life, and then they'll make it snow. And it's just like very, like I cry every time it happens. And over in California Adventure, Radiator Springs, it's so fun to see how they like transform the decor from Halloween to Christmas. Some of it they completely replace. Some of it, like the spider webs made out of wrenches, they just turn into snowflakes. Like they just kind of like transition it. But they also have the rides. They'll have holiday songs as well. So it's like those are get you in the spirits as well. And then just Disneyland as a whole has so many holiday treats that come out during this time of year, both savory and not. And it's just such a truly magical time. I every time I go to Disneyland at Christmas time, it's just like it feels like home. It feels like Christmas, and it's just a beautiful. That's not to say that Disney World does not have that, but some of those, like I had that experience like at that very Merry Christmas party. I got the feeling there, but that was a ticketed event that you'd have to pay more for.
Yes,
so that's all I'm saying.
Yeah, no, and I think that's important to be said, right? Like if you don't want to have to potentially pay double, right? Because if you're paying for a day ticket and you're paying for the party ticket, you're essentially paying double for that day, if that's how you choose to use your time. Going to Disneyland, you are going to get more for just that singular ticket price. Yeah. So I think that's important. And I did realize as you were talking that, I didn't mention the Festival of the Holidays at Epcot, which again is just one of those standard festivals that you get. But Kate, can you talk a little bit about kind of what the difference between the Festival of the Holidays at Epcot and the Festival of the Holidays at Disneyland and DCA?
I mean, mostly it's just they both have kind of food booths, but they're just different, completely different offerings. So I would say that there's also usually more live entertainment, I think, with Disneyland. But that's not to say Epcot doesn't have it as well. I honestly don't pay attention to Epcot's holidays.
Well, Epcot has all the Santas, right, from the different that do all the storytelling. They have candlelight the different processional, the candlelight processional.
I have that at Disneyland too, but only for like a specific day.
It's like 1 or 2 days, right?
Yeah.
Right. And whereas very, very hard to get
more.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's similar vibes, but very different when it comes to kind of those festivals of the holidays. Like, how do you say that plural?
Festival. Yeah, I don't know.
I know.
Yeah, but I think that they're both really beautiful at Christmas time. I will say also something we didn't mention, that if you want to see the parade in Disney World, but you don't want to go to that party, if you're there the week of Christmas Eve, they usually do it then. But we don't necessarily recommend going then because it's really, really busy.
Oh, yeah.
If that's all you want to see is the parade, maybe go to the party earlier.
Yeah. And they'll do it usually like the 23rd, 24th, 25th, 26th-ish usually. Yeah. It depends on when the last party is. So like the last party is typically around the 22nd, depending on the day of the week and that kind of thing. So pretty much from then through Christmas Day, that's the parade you're going to get. They don't advertise it that way, but it's the parade you're going to get.
Well, and Disneyland does have a Christmas parade as well, but it is included in your park ticket. Right. So you don't have to spend extra money to see it. And it's actually a really lovely parade. Right. So,
yes. I do want to hop back briefly because we missed one thing that we had written down, and I don't want to miss anything. And that is kind of during the February time period. We skipped over that. So again, this was hard to kind of figure out how to compare, but I do just want to mention that Disney World does have a what they call the Celebrate Soulfully kind of time of year. It's not really a festival, but this is typically during Black History Month that they do across all of the parks and most of the resorts as well. They have specialty food items that celebrate, Black culture and different flavors and things like that they implement and they offer for a limited time during that Celebrate Soulfully time of year. So that is something that, again, it's not a true festival, but it is kind of just that time of year. If you happen to be there, you get some extra bonus food offerings for that.
Yeah. And in Disneyland, they do something called Celebrate Gospel. It's usually in California Adventure at the same time. So not exactly the same kind of celebration, but it still happens in February, usually for Black History Month, which is really amazing. I love that they do that.
Yeah, so fun. Okay. I think that was the best comparison, but I know Disneyland has a couple other offerings that you wrote down in our notes that you wanted to mention.
Yeah, so this is one of the biggest things I think in terms of events that is the difference between the two is that Disneyland has a lot more events in general because they have all those locals. And I think it's also partially Disneyland trying to get people to come in kind of like the off season when it's cold out and the locals don't want to go because they don't like the cold in California. Right. Like it gets to the 70s, they put on coats, like, just kidding. That's a little bit of exaggeration, but it is like to get them to come out when it's chilly outside, and they need people, and also to, bump up their ticket sales. They're going to offer these off-season events. So they call them Disneyland After Dark, and they do change a little bit, year to year, depending on what they're going to offer. Typically, they'll have Sweethearts Night. So that's usually in February around Valentine's Day. So it's a throwback to date night at Disneyland, which they used to do, which is really sweet. Usually something in the season of the Force, they have a Star Wars night. They have Pride Night. In the past, they've had Throwback Night, which is kind of like a retro celebration. This last year, they did Disney Channel Night. And then they also have other parties like Grad Night, which is really popular. They usually do several of those right around the graduation season. So they have these kind of special extra ticketed events that you'll find. And so most importantly, if you don't want to go to these events and you're going to Disneyland and you're not used to Disneyland schedule, just be aware that these events might be happening. And usually they'll, they're going to close. They'll keep the other park open, but they'll close the park early because of it. And so just be aware that might happen. So,
and similar to what we talked about with Oogie Boogie Bash, a lot of these events sell out super fast and are really hard to get tickets for because they are a big draw for a lot of the local crowds around Anaheim. A lot of the Magic Key holders want to go to the special events more than they want to just visit the park during the day. I feel like
something's different.
Mm-hmm. So
and they get to dress up and stuff like that.
Yes,
it's fun.
Yeah. So plan accordingly if you're someone that wants to go, contrary to what Kate was just talking about. If you're someone that wants to go to one of these events, you really got to pay attention to when tickets are going on sale, and you need to be ready to go on top of it, and then cross your fingers that you get through the queue and actually get to purchase tickets.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a headache, and it does happen a couple months in advance. So you wear. It's not like the same month that you're going to go, so be aware of that. That being said,
I think we covered most of the events. Hopefully, it's a lot, and festivals and things like that. But I think we did our best to give you guys kind of the rundown of who does what and when.
Yes. So let's move on to our last portion of this particular episode and comparison, and really the kind of final hurrah for this series is entertainment and characters, which was this was really weird to organize. Not going to be like it's really hard to compare these. So let's talk a little bit about characters first. So Jackie, do you want to talk about some characters at Disney World?
Yeah, so I would say 95% of characters at Disney World are going to do set location, set time meet and greets, where they have like formal queues and things like that, where you can go and line up and meet the characters. You don't see many that are kind of free roaming. You have a few here and there. Stitch in Tomorrowland tends to roam. Peter Pan, Kate's favorite, Peter Pan. Peter Pan likes to follow Kate.
Weird.
The stepsisters in Fantasyland tend to walk around. So you have a few, but the majority of the characters at Disney World are going to be those kind of stationary, set time, set location meet and greets.
Yes, and whereas in Disneyland, it's mostly the opposite. It's like a lot of characters will be, especially in Fantasyland, you usually start seeing them come out right around 10:30, 11 o'clock is when they'll all just start showing up. And you'll just be like, there's the genie, there's Aladdin, there's, Cinderella, there's like, they're just like there. And you're like, oh, there's a whole bunch of them. That doesn't say that they don't have positions that they go to.
Right.
Because there are like, by the wishing well is one of them, where they'll, like the Evil Queen or Snow White or whatever, they'll hang out near the wishing well and they'll meet people there and they'll walk to and from that area. And so there are some spots that they kind of like will kind of meet people in, but by and large the characters are a lot more free range. They'll just like pop out of nowhere and they'll ride the carousel. Well, and they'll ride the carousel. Like Mary Poppins and Bert will ride the carousel like with the band, and like it's just like that's the like core memories for those when the characters get on this. And sometimes like the Mad Hatter will get on the teacups and like ride that. Like why wouldn't they? Right? They should.
Yes.
That's so. Anyway, that being said, it's just kind of a different way of the way that they operate characters there. But there is a set location that I think we can compare directly to Walt Disney World. And in Disneyland, it's called the Royal Hall or Fantasy Fair, which is basically the princess meet and greet, which is in the place where Carnation Plaza used to be. But it's the Fantasy Fair area just to the left of the castle. And there is usually a pretty long line for that. Sometimes you can meet a princess outside of it, and then there's more inside. So it's... Yeah, but that's the set one for Disneyland. And in Disney World, Jackie,
we have Princess Fairy Tale Hall, which is in Fantasyland, kind of centrally located near the carousel down from where Winnie the Pooh is. And in there, you typically get 4 princesses, right? So it's Tiana, Rapunzel, Cinderella, and Elena of Avalor that meet in there currently. Typically like two sides, right? So there's 2 queues in there that you can pick one side or the other to wait in. And Kate doesn't like that location because it replaced a dark ride and she's sad about it.
Snow White Scary Adventures. Like, how come we lost that for that? Yeah, I got problems with that.
Yeah.
Sad.
Yeah. Well, but you can at least know where to find the princesses in either Magic Kingdom or Disneyland if that's something that is very important to you.
Yeah, and I will say also, I've actually heard guests, just because I hear things when I'm by myself and I'm walking around. I've heard people who are clearly Disney World people, when they walk in, they're like, where is the Mickey meet and greet? Because in Disney World, you have Tony's Town Square Theater, where Mickey usually meets in there with people. Yeah. That's not how it works in Disneyland. That the Opera House is Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln and like an art exhibit. It's like it's not right. The same thing. Yeah. So Mickey and their pals, like all the Fab Five and whatnot, usually meet in Town Square, just in the open air most of the time. So you can find them. Sometimes they'll have to step away for a few minutes, take a break, and come back. Yes. So if you don't see them there, just hang out in Town Square. They'll show up, and they're so much fun to interact with out there, because Mickey's just like waving to the Main Street vehicles and stuff. It's a fun vibe. But
yeah, and whereas in that space in Magic Kingdom, you get kind of a hodgepodge mix of characters. Pluto's out there a lot. Marie from Aristocats is out there a lot. Mary Poppins will pop up there from time to time. But it's kind of a random hodgepodge of whoever is available at that time.
Yeah, it's usually
but not Mickey.
Similar characters. Yeah,
Mickey is inside his theater waiting for friends.
He can't be both places at once. So
no, he is only one mouse. It's just impossible.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes. Okay, so a couple other places that we can kind of sort of compare is you can meet characters at character meals or character breakfast. So lots of different locations we talked about earlier when we were comparing food, that Disney World has, I think, 13 and Disneyland has 5 character meals right now. So just they are different, though, as far as what characters you can meet and when and where and those types of things. So the Disney World list is a little bit complicated because it's like certain locations for certain meals and these specific characters. And it's a lot to kind of cross-coordinate depending on what you're looking for.
Yeah.
So that is something to keep in mind. We've got Chef Mickey's 1900 Park Fair, Akershus, I always say that wrong, Royal Banquet Hall, Cape May Cafe, Cinderella's Royal Table, Crystal Palace, Garden Grill. You've got the Disney Junior Breakfast at Hollywood and Vine, Ohana, Topolino's, and Tusker House. So
and those were just breakfast places.
Yes.
Just to clarify. There's other places that do lunch and dinner. And I was just like, that's the only one I can compare.
Directly compare.
Directly. Right. Yeah. So at Disneyland, for character breakfast, I think the most famous one is the Mickey and Friends Plaza Inn character breakfast. It's not cheap, friends. It's very expensive. Just warning you.
Yep.
And I have a lot of people, anytime I post anything about the Plaza Inn, people are like, I've never been able to get in there because it's so expensive. And I'm like, okay, here's what you need to know about the Plaza Inn. Because it is reservation for breakfast and very expensive with all the characters. And there's some really rare characters there too. You don't ever see anywhere else. And you never really know which ones they're going to be. So if you want to see rare characters, plus Minnie, she's always there. That's a great one to go to. But the rest of the day for lunch and dinner, this is a buffeteria. So it's like a place you get a tray and you kind of get your stuff from the like line and then you go and you sit down. And it doesn't require a reservation at all. So you could just walk in there if you just want to see it. You could just go in.
Yeah.
It's like you don't have to like have a reservation, and it's actually fairly affordable by Disneyland standards. So you can get a plate of fried chicken and split it with the spouse or a friend, and it's great. So just saying, go to Plaza Inn. It's great. The other places you can go to character breakfast. Sorry, I went on a tangent.
That's okay.
Goofy's Kitchen over in the Disneyland Hotel and Storyteller's Cafe over in the Grand Californian. But those are the resorts. So the only one that is actually in the parks, it's a character breakfast, is Minnie and Friends at the Plaza Inn. Yes. So a few less options of places to have character dining.
Just a few.
But that's because the locals, are not going for breakfast.
No.
Like the parks are very, very light crowds in the morning usually because the locals are at work. And second of all, like, they're not going to pay a ton of money for a character meal, like, to be honest. Like, if they're going all the time, that would be a special occasion, maybe a birthday, maybe, but not, that's for people who are tourists. So, like, this is our one trip every couple of years, like, they're going to splurge on that. So that's why they think they don't have that.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you want more information on character meals, we did an entire episode all about character dining at both parks. So that is your place to find all of that. And it's hard to compare, right? Because Disney World has a lot more locations, a lot more set locations with set characters. And Disneyland has limited locations and a lot of rotating characters, especially like Kate mentioned at the Plaza Inn. So it's really hard to compare the two together.
Yeah.
But either way, you do have character breakfast options. So let's think of the positive, right?
It's true. Alrighty, so let's talk a little bit about some other entertainment. And I love this first one because I didn't even think of that. And I do have a Disneyland equivalent. So you want to mention the first one there, Jackie?
Yeah, so I was just thinking about kind of just general entertainment in the parks. And the first thing that comes to mind for me is the Dapper Dans. So that's something that I always think about at Magic Kingdom. So they are an a cappella singing group on Main Street. If you are not familiar with them, they are such a vibe and so much fun to watch and so entertaining. Sometimes they're on the stage by the castle. Sometimes they're on their little trolley car up and down Main Street. Sometimes they're just hanging out, standing on Main Street. So lots of different places that you can find them at Magic Kingdom.
Yeah. And Disneyland also has the Dapper Dans. And it's fun because I don't know if they have it in Disneyland, but at least in Disney World, they have those chime organ. They have that are like they're from 1901 in Chicago, so they're like antique instruments that they use. I can't remember exactly what they're called, but they use these like hand chimes essentially that are really fun. So if you ever get to catch them doing that, make sure you stop for a moment to listen because they're a really interesting instrument. But Disneyland has their own Dapper Dans, and they do pretty much the same thing just on Main Street USA.
Yes. Yep. And then another direct comparison is the bands, right? So they're called different things, and they are, to the general public, they're the same. To people who are very musically inclined, they are vastly different groups. So at Disney World in Magic Kingdom, they have the Main Street Philharmonic, which is all brass instruments and some drums. And they are found on, I don't know how many locations they're in anymore. They used to be in more locations. I think they kind of toned that down with the reopening when they brought a lot of the entertainment back. But they're typically around Main Street. They, again, are sometimes on the stage. They are sometimes just kind of stationed around the hub, so you can find them. They play lots of different medleys of Disney songs and live music. And I always stop to listen to them because they're so much fun.
Yeah. So in Disneyland, we have the Disneyland Band, which has been an institution since the very beginning. In fact, just a little bit of Disneyland history for you. That area in Town Square that's around the flagpole, it's all labeled on the very early maps of Disneyland construction as the bandstand. And that's why they were going to have a gazebo there, because it was where the band was going to play. And that was the centerpiece of Town Square. Which, of course, they moved the gazebo because it ruined the sightline to the castle. And then they put in Disneyland Paris to ruin the sightline to that castle. But anyway,
it's fine.
Yeah, but the Disneyland Band is phenomenal. And they don't just play on Main Street or in front of the castle. You will find them in front of the castle a lot, sometimes with Mary Poppins or Bert, doing dances, which is great. But they'll also be in like Frontierland. They'll pop up over there and they'll perform in front of the Golden Horseshoe. And I don't know if I can explain how amazing they are. Someone who just really loves bands. Jackie, do you have another information of how they're different in terms of musically different?
Yes.
Do you want to add there?
A lot of what they play is similar, but the instrumentation makeup of the two is completely different. So, and again, this is very like detail specific because Kate and I are both music people. We both have a musical background, and like both of our husbands are music people. So this is what you're stuck with. Sorry, not sorry. Disney World has, like I said, all brass instruments and drums. Disneyland also has woodwinds, so you'll find things like saxophones in that band. So it just has a different feel to it because of the different instrumentation, and they're able to do some different kind of musical styling because they have some of that. At Disney World, you get more of the like march feel and that kind of thing. At Disneyland, you get more jazz in their repertoire as well. So it's a bigger mix, a wider range of what they're capable of playing just because of the different instrumentation.
And they had the Firehouse 5+2, which was a Disneyland band that was made up all of Disney animators that did used to play at Disneyland back in the day. Obviously, they don't play there anymore. So I think that the mix of that is because of Disneyland's legacy and how they want to honor that in the music that they play, which I think is really special. So I think that's why they have that. I feel like they also do a lot more choreography with the Disneyland band.
Yes, So typically with Main Street Philharmonic, you'll just find them in kind of like an arc formation. They will have people step forward if they're doing like solos or featured parts. But the Disneyland band, they truly do have more movement when they do it. They interact with each other more, with the crowd more, I feel like. Just kind of a different vibe. And it's interesting because I feel like the Main Street Philharmonic to me is a little bit more, I don't want to say unapproachable, but like they're one that you stand back and watch. Where like the Disneyland band, you tend to be more drawn into what they're doing and you want to get closer and interact with them. So it is just kind of a different vibe. They're both amazing, phenomenal groups that are, I'll be honest, like nearly impossible to get into because they're just, the musicianship level of those groups is so high. It's incredible to stand and listen to either of them play. But they just have a different vibe overall. And I think it is just truly like more of your like stereotypical California laid back kind of vibe versus more of like a parade performance in Florida.
Yeah, they're just different vibes.
And now you know more about the bands than you ever wanted to know.
We should mention a little bit of some of the other live music, though, just as we're kind of talking about live music in general. Disneyland also has the Pearly Band, which usually lives in Fantasyland. So you'll see them. They have little like pearls all over their costumes. A lot of the times they'll appear with Mary Poppins or Bert, because it's all kind of that era of entertainment. And then you also see them get on the carousel, and so they'll shut off the music on the carousel and the band becomes the music for the carousel, which is such a fun time to ride the carousel or just to watch it when you're around. It's just amazing to watch them play while they're on the carousel. But Disneyland also has usually a jazz band that takes place. They have a couple of other live music spots that happen, and then they have a lot of live music also for festivals and whatnot over in California Adventure. But there's always some live music usually happening somewhere in Disneyland. But in Disney World, there is some other live music that happens as well, like at Epcot. You've got a couple of things.
Yeah, primarily at Epcot, honestly. Now, there are some shows, which we'll get to here in just a second, that are live performing. But as far as like music goes, typically just the concert series that they'll have at Epcot. So they do an Eat to the Beat, which is during the Food and Wine Festival, and then the Garden Rocks, I think is what it's called, during the Flower and Garden. So but for those, they will bring in more like popular mainstream bands. So it's not an internal band that you get, like, which is everything that Kate was talking about is all internal staffed through Disneyland. But with these, it's more like the, more popular groups and things you may hear on the radio and stuff like that will come to those series that you can get. And those series at Epcot, they typically have 2 to 3 show times per day. And the bands will perform like 2 or 3 days in a row. So they do kind of like a little mini set there for a couple days. So those, all that information gets published whenever the festival information comes out. And those are included with your day ticket, just like everything that Kate was talking about, all those performances and stuff. You can just head on over there whenever you want to. Do keep in mind that the ones at Epcot, if they're really popular bands, they will form very long lines and will fill up very fast. So plan accordingly. If it's someone like Simple Plan or some of those bigger name bands that come, they get very busy.
I also have a lot of Mom Street friends in my chat saying about drummers in every park. So Animal Kingdom has the Tam Tam drummers. There's the Jammers in Epcot. We have Hollywood Studios has the Green Army Men. So there's definitely a lot of like drumming. Oh, and Epcot also has usually in Japan, I can't remember what they're called, but they have the drummers that remember what they're perform there too. Like, lots of drumming happening over in Disney World, which I guess you don't really see as much in Disneyland.
No, you really don't.
Disneyland though has, I don't know if they do this in Disney World. I'm trying to remember if I've seen it. Disneyland will have like schools perform, like school marching bands that will go down Main Street USA and whatnot.
Yeah, Disney World does that too. And they'll have it. They usually do it with the afternoon parade with Festival of Fantasy, but sometimes they also have like an additional like before the last cavalcade, they'll do some marching bands too. So yeah, there's definitely that. Super popular during like the spring, especially like spring break into summer season. That tends to be when you see that the most at the parks.
Long story short, both places have live music, but it's definitely a different vibe between the two. So, but I will say getting beignets and a mint julep and listening to the New Orleans Jazz Band is like a whole vibe while you watch the boats go by. Like that, there's not much that beats that at Disney, just saying. So.
It's lovely. Anyway, okay, let's talk a little bit. I know it'll happen. I just gotta be patient. Okay, let's talk about shows because I feel like this is something that is fairly different across the two parks. So Over on the Disney World side, we do have a couple different shows, and I started to list them, and then I stopped listing them, so I'm going to pull the rest of them off the top of my head, because I'm looking going, it's not just at Animal Kingdom. Those are the first two I wrote down. But so Animal Kingdom...
we're just going to pause there for a second and just say that it's been a week, friends. Like, we are on the struggle bus for a reason. We got lots going on. When this episode's recorded, we had the hurricane blow through in Florida. We have just like personal stuff going on. So we're doing the best we can. So thank you.
I'm just looking at this list going, I only wrote down Animal Kingdom. I wrote down none of the other parks that have shows.
Yeah, I didn't even put anything on Disneyland's side, so it's great.
We got this. Okay, let's talk about shows at Walt Disney World. So Animal Kingdom does have two fairly involved musicals that they have at their park. They have the Finding Nemo musical with all the fantastic, amazing puppets and things like that. And then they have the Festival of the Lion King, which is one of my all-time favorites that they have.
Can I say where that one came from?
Yes, go ahead, Kate.
Okay, so Festival of the Lion King is only there. It's one of the longest running shows in Disney history. We have the Golden Horseshoe as well, but this is like one of the longest running shows in Disney history. And the Lion King show I love so much because it came from a parade that I saw when I was young, when I was 11, and I saw in Disneyland the Lion King parade, and they repurposed the floats for this because they were going to put Beastly Kingdom in Animal Kingdom, but they ran out of money because the animals were really expensive. So instead of that, they put Camp Mini Mickey in, and they're like, well, we need some shows. So they put a Pocahontas show and they put the Lion King show in Animal Kingdom because they're like, we got nothing else to put here because we have no money. So they put a couple figures in the woods and they put these shows in. And that's how we got the Animal Kingdom show with the floats from Disneyland. They transported them over, kind of give them a little facelift, put some choreography in, and voila. Now we have one of the longest running stage shows in Disney history that everybody loves. So that's where Lion King came from.
It's so much fun. If you have not seen it, it is, in my opinion, it is a must do when you go to Animal Kingdom. I think it's very, very, very fun. So those two things are unique to Animal Kingdom because Disneyland, DC, they don't have the equivalent of Animal Kingdom over there, right? Then at Hollywood Studios, they have a couple shows over there. They have the Beauty and the Beast live show over there at the theater. And then they have the Frozen Sing-Along show, which is attraction, but also show because it is hosted live by performers that are the royal historians over there. And I will mention that, let me go back for a second, the Beauty and the Beast show is an abridged version of the movie. So you don't have to worry about sitting there for the entire length of what would be the full Broadway version of the Beauty and the Beast. It is an abridged version, so it is not that long. So both of those shows exist over at Hollywood Studios. We talked a lot about Epcot. Epcot does have some shows, but it's primarily live entertainment in the Countries of World Showcase or like videos that you would go and see for those kind of instances when it comes to shows and things like that over there. And Magic Kingdom doesn't really have... They have things like the Tiki Room and Country Bears that are kind of show-esque that they also have at Disneyland. But I don't know that I would... Right, I'm getting there.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. But I don't know that I would put those in that category. But they do have the stage show that Kate just mentioned. You're fine. You can't read my mind. It's okay.
No.
So they do have the Mickey's Magical Friendship Fair stage show in front of the castle, which is super fun. Long story short, Mickey's throwing a party and has a bunch of friends that come to the party. And so you get to see lots of characters in that one. So the downside,
around for a long time now.
Mm-hmm, the downside to that one is it's very, very hot because there's no shade standing there. So plan accordingly. Maybe go early in the morning before it gets too warm or go to one of the last ones in the evening. They typically run those until about 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon when it comes to the stage show there. So yeah, I think that's most of it.
Yeah. So for shows for Disneyland, sometimes they'll have a show that's in the Fantasyland theater. It really depends on what's going on. Sometimes that theater is doing absolutely nothing, and sometimes it has a show, and sometimes the show's good, and sometimes it's not worth your time. So it really depends. Do your research before you go about what this show looks like. But I will say one thing I would say is like a do not miss this if you've never been to Disneyland before, especially if you have littles, but even if you don't, the storytelling at Royal Theater is one of the most underrated shows in Disney history. They're so funny. And it's like the Beauty and the Beast one is good in like Hollywood studios, but this one is so much, it's like, cause it's purposefully low budget. Yeah. And it has a live pianist that plays the whole time. So it's like, and it's so funny. That's where I get my famous, like they teach you audience participation to say huzzah or bye, like bye, so you get to participate that way. And it's like this really small, intimate, it's not a theater. It used to be the place where they used to have dancing in Disneyland once upon a time. So, but they've converted it into a theater. And so it's funny. They usually have 2 or 3 different shows that rotate during the day, but all of them are fantastic. And it's a great place to get out of the sun a little bit and sit down and just enjoy a really good laugh. So that is the main entertainment there. Every once in a while, they'll do something over in California Adventure. Like they had the Rogers, the musical, which was so short-lived. And I didn't get to see it because it was so short-lived.
I don't know why they made, who knows?
Yeah. Right? That's at the Hyperion Theater. So there's not an awful lot of live performing outside of those venues. That's where it is. We do have a lot more live music, I think, than live performances.
Yeah, you get more of the music and less kind of organized shows, so to speak, where Disney World is. And I think, again, that's just the differences, right? People, when they're on vacation, they want to know when they can go see these shows. They don't want it to just be random times throughout the day. So they want that kind of schedule similar to what we saw with the characters, whereas Disneyland, more locals, they're going to go just for the experience, and they want to see the characters walking around, and they want to walk through New Orleans Square and go to see the jazz band and that kind of stuff. So just totally different takes on the live entertainment. Can we talk briefly about fireworks? Because I think that's something that we should talk about between the two parks. So fireworks and kind of nighttime shows. We did talk about Fantasmic briefly in the last episode. But there is Fantasmic offered at both coasts. In Disney World, you get it at Hollywood Studios. It is in a bigger amphitheater where there's kind of bleacher seating that you can sit and enjoy. It is not that way in Disneyland. You have standing room only to watch that over in Disneyland, and it takes place on their Rivers of America area. So again, vastly different when you're looking to experience Fantasmic from coast to coast.
Yes. So we've covered this in a couple of different episodes, so I don't feel like we need to spend a lot of time on it, but just know that there's definitely seating in Hollywood Studios versus standing fighting for space in Disneyland. I think it's the biggest difference there. The shows are very different too, so they're not the same. They have similar storylines, but not the same storyline exactly. So different characters and whatnot. Yeah. So in terms of parades, do we do fireworks first or parades? What do you think?
Pick one.
Pick one. Let's do parades first.
Okay.
So in Disney World, we have a very long running parade in Magic Kingdom.
I know. Yes. I just looked that up the other day. I was like, oh my gosh, it's been around for over a decade now.
It's been a long time.
Yeah. So Festival of Fantasy is your parade at Magic Kingdom that you will get. It is the parade in Disney World because the majority of there used to be parades at a lot of other places and they no longer exist. You do get a few little cavalcades there. I think at Magic Kingdom, I think they're only down to the one other cavalcade. There used to be a ton, right? Because during the height of the pandemic, they were not running the big major parades because they didn't want people to congregate. So they gave us these little short cavalcades, and they started off being just kind of sporadic throughout the day. And then they eventually put them on a schedule. But I think they only have the Adventure Friends cavalcade left, if I am correct in my thinking.
That's the only one I've seen in a while.
Yeah. So I think it's got 2 or 3 times throughout the day that it runs. I love the Adventure Friends Cavalcade. I hope it never goes away because I think it's such a fun mix of characters, and has a really fun theme song that is just a vibe. So I like that
the characters
cavalcade
every once in a while. Just
I think that would be fine, but I think
keep it fresh.
Yes, but I think I love that it's an opportunity to see some of the rare characters, right? You get some of these, the Three Caballeros characters are on there. You get Bruno from Encanto is on one of the floats. You get Pocahontas. You get, just some of those other characters that you don't see a ton. You get them in that cavalcade, which I appreciate. The other parks at Disney World don't have a parade.
Nope.
So if you want to see a parade, head to Magic Kingdom.
I always liked I don't remember what they called it, but like when they did the Imperial March with the Stormtroopers in Hollywood Studios, I always thought that was really fun.
You know which one I miss?
That.
I miss the parade at Animal Kingdom. It was one of my favorites. It was so cool. They had a bunch of really unique floats, and like Mickey and all his friends in like the safari gear, and I loved that one.
I don't think I ever saw that one.
I saw that one once in 2009, and it was short-lived. It did not exist long after that. But it was so cute.
There is a parade that's going to be happening in Magic Kingdom that's a nighttime parade. So they have a new parade that they're working on, but we don't really know what it is yet because they're still developing it. So that's in the works.
Yeah, but it's supposed to be soon. I saw they posted some casting for performers for it on there.
Ooh, that's exciting. Yeah, that means they're getting close.
Yes.
In terms of parades for Disneyland, one that is one of the best parades I think that Disney has ever produced that's not happening right now but says it's returning later is the Magic Happens Parade. And it is really good. It has like 2 really solid songs in it. Like usually you get like 1 good solid song per parade. This one has 2 that you'll be singing afterwards, and phenomenal characters, really amazing floats. Just, it's worth seeing if you're in Disneyland. But other than that, they do have an exclusive parade that's the Frightfully Fun parade during Oogie Boogie Bash. We have that Lunar New Year one that I mentioned before, and then the Christmas Fantasy Parade that happens at Christmas time that you can see then. But beyond that, those are all the parades that we get. But you have the electric water pageant over there in Disney World, which is something that we don't have. So
yeah, and that's just it. It's a parade of sorts. If you, I guess, a parade that floats through a float. Yeah, oh, flotillas, R.I.P. flotillas.
I know.
Oh, why you gotta go there?
I'm so sorry.
But yes, if you're not familiar with what is the official name? I always get this wrong. The electrical water pageant.
Water pageant. Yeah,
I think.
Water pageant.
It is very, very cute. Like, I don't know how many, there's maybe 8 different floats that do different scenes and characters, and they have timed to different music, and it travels around the Seven Seas Lagoon. I had to think of the name of that for a minute. Whew, my brain is just, we're about to the end here. So you can see that from right outside the gate in Magic Kingdom. You can see it from all of those monorail resorts, right? So the Polynesian, the Grand Floridian, the Contemporary. You can see it from there at different times. And that is typically in your app. So if that's something you wanted to see, it's not in the parks. You don't have to go to the parks to see it. You can look that up in your My Disney Experience app and find the times for the different locations for that.
So that's mainly the parades. I have a couple people mentioning also the Pixar parade that happens, Pixar Fest and whatnot, which is really fun. So.
And we do get, like Kate was mentioning, we have some seasonal parades and things like that, but typically they're replacing, right? So they're not in addition to. So Kate mentioned that Magic Happens is not happening right now because they're doing the Halloween. What's it called?
Yeah, but it's only during Oogie Boogie Bash. Yeah, it's not at Disneyland. So it's just kind of a bummer. It's just nothing at Disneyland at the moment.
Yeah. So and if you're going to a party at Magic Kingdom in the evening, that's the only time you get those specialty parades for the Boo to You and the Mickey's Magical Christmas something. I don't know. It has a certain name. The Christmas parade.
We're usually so prepared, and this is like a weird week. We're like, there's a Christmas parade. That's all you need to know.
In our defense, the majority of this information we have discussed like ad nauseum in all of our other episodes.
It's true.
So,
with correct names.
Yeah. You know what we're talking about. You got
know.
this.
You've been there. It's fine.
Exactly. And if this is your first time, welcome to Mom Street. It is that time of year where Kate and I are, we
are moms who are busy, and we are in the thick of the holiday corridor. Okay, it's like Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas. We're just running to the end of the year.
We are. This is what we're doing. We're like here on the decline. Okay, we're maybe not quite that far. We're like up here, going towards Halloween and Thanksgiving. It's gonna be great till the end of the year. We got this.
Yeah. Then we'll have our Christmas party and celebrate. It'll be great.
Exactly. Okay, let's talk about fireworks before we go completely off the rails. Fireworks at nighttime shows. We already talked about Fantasmic at Disney World. We have Epcot has Luminous. I had to think of the name of it. I was going to call it Harmonious. R.I.P.
Harmonious. I know. I was. Gosh.
Yes,
things that painful.
So they have the Luminous show, which happens around the World Showcase Lagoon. Is that what that's called? See, I don't know. Yeah.
Yes.
The water. Lagoon. World Showcase. Yes. Which it also, I will say, I like the song that starts and ends that one. It's a good song. I like that one.
It's fine. It's better than Epcot Forever.
Oh, that's not even a comparison. It is not even a comparison.
Compared to Harmonious.
No, it's no Harmonious. No, for sure. Completely different.
The storytelling, it was so good with Harmonious. Anyway,
so Luminous is at Epcot. They have that nighttime show. Fantasmic has, scratch that, reverse it. Hollywood Studios has Fantasmic. There is currently no nighttime show at Animal Kingdom, and it's been that way for a while. Occasionally,
Rivers of Light.
I know. Occasionally, if you are there in the evening time, you will get the projection mappings on the Tree of Life, if the park is open long enough for it to be dusk. You will get that.
Rare.
Yes. And then Magic Kingdom, of course, right now has Happily Ever After as their fireworks show on your standard night that's not like an extra party or anything like that. So I think that's all of the nighttime at Disney World. What does Disneyland have?
Well, every night at least has a projection show on the castle and Small World. So if you don't want to stand in the crowds, go over to Small World and there's less crowds there. Sometimes there's fireworks if it's the weekend or holiday or sometimes the summer. But sometimes in those times there's high altitude winds and they cancel the firework part of it. So fireworks are like a bonus if you get to see the actual firework part of it, but at least you'll see like a projection show regardless of that. But then over in California Adventure, we have World of Color. I don't know what they're doing exactly right now at this moment because they're doing World of Color 1. I just haven't been back there in a month or two. So what World of Color is a fantastic water show that the original World of Color happened because they recognized that it was not a nighttime park. People would leave the park and go to Disneyland. And so it became a ghost town at night in DCA because nobody had any reason to stay and the rides weren't good enough to stick around for. So everybody was just exiting the park and it would just be nobody there. So they're like, we got to do something. We need to have a nighttime show, a reason for people to stick around and have dinner and linger and long enough to go to a show. So that's why they installed in the lagoon there, they have the World of Color show. And so that it all around the Paradise. Oh, this Pixar Pier now. It's like Paradise Pier. They have lots of places to watch, not seating, but places to stand and watch. Mm-hmm. You do want to get at 12 p.m. if you're in the park at that time. They do have a virtual queue drop where you can get kind of like an assigned area to go to, so you have better viewing and not have to like fight the crowds to find a spot to see it. So I do recommend doing that if you haven't seen it. But it's basically just massive amounts of water with a lot of projection and lights and fire and it's a really, really good show. I think we all like World of Color a little bit more than World of Color 1, but I still like World of Color 1 personally. It's got a very sweet tribute to Walt Disney in it as well, which I appreciate.
Okay, I think that's it. Did we get everything, friends? I hope so. Oh my goodness gracious. Again,
it's hard to compare the two,
yes.
you know, because they're so different. It's apples to oranges, friends. They're not the same. So
right. And ultimately, I think that's one of the most important things that we can end this little series with, right? Is if you are someone who is used to Disneyland and planning to go to Disney World or vice versa, you have to know how drastically different these parks are. Yes, their names are almost the same and a lot of people mix them up, but they are so drastically different when it comes to everything that we talked about. A lot of similarities, but still so many differences.
Yeah. So it's worth to go to both. I always say that it always hurts me a little bit when people are like, oh no, we go to Disney World all the time, so we don't need to go to Disneyland or vice versa. And I'm just like,
they're so
different.
Yeah.
But, you know, to each their own. Sometimes it's hard to get to the other one. So it is what it is. So
Yes, absolutely.
But we're not quite done with this episode. We always have one other segment that is a special segment at the end of every episode where we talk about something that's different than what we've been discussing the episode. And it is a question for our Ask the Moms segment. And it's a question from somebody in our Mom Street community. So this question, I think, is a good one for Jackie.
Okay.
So I'm going to ask it. And it is, what is the best character meal for elementary aged boys in Walt Disney World?
That is a tricky question because it really truly depends on what characters, and that's what I'm always going to kind of like lead if I have this conversation with someone who's asking. What characters is your kiddo wanting to see, willing to see? Who else is going with you? Because like, yes, I understand that you want to make it someone that your boy is going to want to meet, but you also have to kind of please the masses if you're on a family trip, right? So
that's so true. Make everybody happy.
Yes. So it's one of those things where it really just depends. And honestly, in my personal opinion, I wouldn't rule out any of these because even if you have, let's say, an 8, 9, 10-year-old boy, he may not want to meet princesses, but sometimes those meet and greets can be some of the most like entertaining, fun, memorable experiences that you have. So just don't completely rule them out. But I would truly just look up what kind of characters, right? So if I'm looking for what we would consider to be stereotypical characters that an elementary age boy is going to want to see, 1900 Park Fair has Aladdin. So that may be a good one that you may want to meet. If you're looking for any combination of Mickey, Minnie, Donald, Daisy, Goofy, that kind of vibe, there is a good mix of any of those characters at any of these following locations. So like Cape May Cafe, Chef Mickey's, Garden Grill, Topolino's, which I think is a really good one because the food is amazing there.
Food's great and it's a crowd pleaser. Like there's just so much. There's something for everybody there.
Yes,
we always stand.
Yes, we do. We do. And also Tusker House has the combo of kind of the sensational 6, I think is what you call them when you include Pluto in some of those. So that would be a good option. If you've got a kiddo that maybe has a soft spot for Pooh and Tigger, you've got Crystal Palace as an option for that one. But again, it really just depends on who you're going to want to see. Another crowd favorite I feel like is the Ohana character breakfast because you get Lilo and Stitch and you get Mickey and Pluto there. So that's a really good mix of characters for that age demographic, so to speak. But again, I would really just think about what characters is my boy going to want to see, what characters are the rest of us going to want to see, and kind of try to pick and choose from there and have a couple options because places like Topolino's Terrace are harder to get into than some of the others. And use those dining alerts, right? Several different places that you can set up alerts. Some are free, some you get extra with paid subscription for setting up dining alerts to help notify you of reservations that become available during your time window. So I would definitely utilize those if it's something like Topolino's and you can't get a reservation at your 60-day out window.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I think it really depends on what they're into. And so, your kid. So,
yeah.
But some of those might be easier to get to than others, because if you're in the parks versus going to a resort, if you're not staying at that resort, can be difficult unless you have your own car. And even then, sometimes it's like you have to confirm that you have a reservation to park there and all those things. So I probably lean towards something that's in the parks unless it's convenient to wherever you're staying personally.
Yeah, that's a really good point. We typically have a car, so we don't usually have issues getting places. But yeah, it can be tricky too. If you're going from a resort to try to get to a dining, you're going to need to either plan a lot of extra time to go to a park first, which is kind of frustrating to have to do, or you're going to have to plan it in your budget to be able to take a Lyft or an Uber or a minivan or whatever it is that you're looking for. And I will just mention, I have an 8-year-old boy and he loves Topolino's Terrace. Again, it's so easy.
It's fun.
Yes.
Yeah. They sing a little song. They all come to the tables. Yes. It's just, the food's amazing. Yeah. It's so good. Everything about it is really fun. And it feels like going to another place because its location is up on the roof and it's got a great view and it's just a fun adventure. Yes. And it's relatively easy to get to from Hollywood Studios. You can take the Skyliner over. So it's not difficult to get over there.
Yes. So definitely look at transportation as well. But yeah, I would look at the characters, have a couple different options, and think about too, this isn't necessarily part of the question, but I always encourage people to really think about when you're planning your character meals, because that is a large portion of your day that you're going to take, unfortunately, especially if you're including transportation. So I will often suggest doing them on, like, if you've got a resort day, or like if maybe you don't fly out until 4:00 in the afternoon on your last day, maybe you could do a breakfast that morning. So just really think about the time that you want to carve out for those, because you want to have a good experience and you want to be able to see all the characters. So you're going to want to take upwards of 1.5 to 2 hours probably at the meal, not counting transportation time.
No, that's a really good tip. Usually, like, if we were going to do Topolino's, we usually do it on like the day we fly out, if we're flying in the evening or something, so that we can just relax and enjoy, and it's the end of our trip and we celebrate and whatnot.
Yeah. So we actually ended our last trip with Topolino's before we drove home, and we got in the car and I looked at my husband and I was like, yeah, I think we need to do character meals every time we go to leave now, because it was just such a nice way to end it. I was still sad to be leaving, but it was such like a nice little we wrapped it with a bow at the end, right? Like it was such a fun way to end, and everyone was in a good mood because we had just had such a lovely experience. And so I was like, we might have to do that from now on.
The only way that backfires is if everybody either gets too tired or somebody gets sick on your trip, and then you end up having to cancel, which is always possibilities.
Yes, which we also went through, which is why we had not initially had Topolino's on our checkout date, but we had to reschedule it because both of my kiddos got sick at different times on our last trip. So we had to push out our reservation, and the best use of our time was to do it on our checkout day. So it was not intentional, but it was a happy it was a happy accident that it worked out that way. Thank you so much to those of you who have submitted Ask the Moms. We got to wrap that up here just briefly. We love hearing from you guys. We love answering your questions. So if you have questions, please send them our way. We would love to include them in our next episodes and get those answers for you. So
you can reach out to us at momstreetusa@gmail.com is probably the easiest way, or on our Discord channel, which is our Pocket Fam Walrus Carp Discord. We do have a channel on there, or any of our social media channels. You can reach out there. So, well, I think that pretty much wraps up everything in this episode. Jackie, where are we headed next time?
On our next episode, we are going to be tackling rope drop strategies for the different parks. So that's a question that I feel like everyone needs a little insight into answering. So we are going to tackle that in our next episode.
All right. I think that pretty much, though, wraps up everything else. Do you have any final thoughts here, Jackie, as we wrap up?
We made it. We're here. We did it. We made it to the end. This was a little of a chaotic Mom Street You know, sometimes
yeah.
we need a little chaos with our order, and we are usually very orderly and very organized. And, you know, this is true life. Sometimes it just doesn't happen the way we want it to. But hey, we gave you the information. It was entertaining. It was helpful. I think we did it. We did it.
And I think that this is a good lesson, that especially because the day we're recording this is World Mental Health Day, and just to remind yourself to give yourself a lot of grace, because it is tough. Sometimes just day to day can be really difficult, and you can be very hard on yourself when things don't go exactly as you maybe would like them to go. But just a reminder to be kind to yourself, friends, and take care of yourself and your mental health and your well-being. It's very important.
And don't ever hesitate to reach out if you just need someone to talk to. Kate and I are always here. We're here on our Mom Street accounts. We're here on our own personal accounts. I think most of you know where to find us. If you just need a listening ear, send us a message.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, thank you for joining us for this episode of Mom Street USA. We will see you next time for rope drop strategies in the U.S. parks.
Yes. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.